Welcome back, dark hearts, and the misunderstood. You're safe here, and you deserve rest too. Let go of your worries, troubles, and pain. You're safe in my shadow. I'll take care of you. We'll be exploring another immersive and cozy story, but instead of being the hero, we'll be exploring the villain, the anti-hero, or the morally grey. Tonight, you'll be in the shoes of a Nightbound Guardian, a shadow wielder who protects a town from horrors they cannot see, at a cost they cannot understand. The heroes call you a tyrant, the townsfolk fear you, but every night you stand between them and the darkness that hunts them. Come, let's walk through your lonely vigil together, where duty and sacrifice blur like shadows at dawn. You watch the sun descend from your tower window, and you feel the familiar stirring in your chest. The shadows lengthen across the town of Millhaven below, reaching like dark fingers across cobblestone streets and thatched roofs. Soon the change will come. Soon you will be what you need to be. Your tower stands at the northern edge of town, a stone structure that predates the current settlement by centuries. No one remembers who built it originally. The townsfolk just know it's always been there, and for the past 7 years, you've called it home. They don't come here. They're afraid of you, and perhaps they should be. The room around you is sparse but functional, a bed you rarely use since you sleep during the day. The mattress is thin, the blanket's rough wool that you've had since the beginning. You don't need comfort anymore. Sleep is just a necessity, a requirement your body demands before you can function again at night. The bed sits against the eastern wall, positioned so that when you do collapse into it at dawn, the morning sun doesn't hit your face directly. Small mercy. A desk occupies the western wall, facing the window that overlooks the town. It's made of dark wood, scarred and stained from years of use. The surface is covered in maps of the town and the surrounding Wraithwood forest. Some maps are official, purchased from cartographers in better times. Others you've drawn yourself, marking patrol routes, danger zones, places where the pale hunters emerge most frequently. Red ink marks attack sites. Black ink marks successful defense points. The maps are a constellation of marks, 7 years of accumulated tactical knowledge, and most importantly, your journal. The leather-bound book sits open on the desk, filled with your handwriting. You've been writing in it more frequently lately. The memories slip away faster now, and if you don't record them immediately, they vanish like morning mist under sunlight. The journal is thick, hundreds of pages filled with dense text. You're on your 4th volume now. The previous 3 sit on a shelf, a chronicle of your slow dissolution. You pick up the journal and read the last entry, written this morning before you collapsed into daylight sleep. Day 2558. I protected the eastern quarter from 3 pale hunters. The Henderson's daughter stayed out past curfew again. I had to shadow walk her home before they caught her scent. She screamed when she saw me. They always scream. I can't remember my mother's face anymore. I know I had a mother. Everyone does. But when I try to picture her, there's just fog. Was she tall? Short? What color were her eyes? Nothing. Just empty space where the memory should be. The shadows are hungry. They're always hungry. And I keep feeding them because I have no choice. You close the journal slowly, running your fingers over the worn leather cover. 2558 days, 7 years of nights, each one recorded, each one a piece of yourself burned away And before that, the memories are scattered, fragmentary, like trying to recall a dream hours after waking. You know you came to Millhaven for a reason. The journal says so. Early entries mention a journey, a purpose, a determination. But the specifics have been eaten away by the shadows' endless appetite. You know you chose this. The journal is very clear about that. You made a conscious decision to become the Nightbound Guardian, to accept the costs, to stand watch no matter what it took from you. But why? What drove you to this choice? You flip back through the pages, looking for answers. An entry from 6 months into your vigil catches your eye. I saw the village again in my dreams. The bodies, so many bodies, children, elders, people who trusted me to keep them safe. I failed them. I didn't understand the threat quickly enough, didn't realize what the pale hunters were until it was too late. I found them all dead in the morning, drained of life, their faces frozen in terror. That village is ash now. I burned it myself. Couldn't leave them like that. Couldn't let them become something else. Millhaven won't be the same. I won't fail twice. I'll stand watch every night. I'll pay whatever price the shadows demand, because the alternative is unacceptable. There it is. The origin of your determination. A village you failed to protect. You don't remember its name anymore. Don't remember the faces of the people who died. But the guilt remains. A constant weight that drives you forward even when you can't remember why. What you do remember clearly is the first night in Millhaven. The first time you saw the pale hunters emerging from the Wraithwood, drawn by the lights and warmth and fear of human settlement. That memory is vivid, protected somehow from the shadow's consumption. Perhaps because it's the foundation of everything that came after. You were staying at an inn on the eastern edge of town. Having arrived that afternoon, you couldn't sleep. The proximity to the Wraithwood made you uneasy, stirred something in your memory that you couldn't quite grasp. So you stood at your window, watching the forest edge as darkness fell. That's when you saw them. Tall, gaunt figures emerging from between the trees. Their proportions were wrong, arms too long, bodies too thin, movements too smooth and fluid. Their skin was pale as moonlight, stretched tight over angular bones, but their faces were the worst part. Almost human, but not quite. Like a mask carved by someone who'd heard humans described but never actually seen one. Eyes too large and too dark, mouths that didn't quite close properly, expressions that never changed. They glided forward, 3 of them that first night, moving with eerie coordination toward the edge of town. A family was returning late from their farm, a cart pulled by an old horse, children bundled in the back. The family didn't see the pale hunters, didn't know they were being stalked. You acted on instinct, ran from the inn shouting warnings that made no sense because you didn't have words for what you were seeing. The family looked at you like you were mad, this stranger screaming about monsters in the darkness. And then the pale hunters came into the light of the family's lantern, and everyone understood. The father tried to grab a weapon. The mother pulled the children close. The horse reared in panic, nearly tipping the cart. The pale hunters advanced with patient inevitability, reaching with those 2 long arms. That's when you discovered your power. You don't remember how you knew to reach for the shadows. Don't remember learning this ability or training in its use. It just happened. You needed to stop the pale hunters, and the shadows responded. They poured out of the darkness around you, wrapping around your arms, your body, giving you strength and speed that shouldn't be possible. You threw yourself between the family and the creatures, created a barrier of solidified shadow that the pale hunters couldn't cross, held them back while the family fled to safety, drove the creatures back into the forest through sheer determination and this newfound power you didn't understand. When it was over, you collapsed in the street, nose bleeding, head pounding. The family was gone, probably too terrified to thank their rescuer, and you were alone with the realization that you could do this. You could protect this town. You could prevent what happened to that other village, the one whose name you can no longer remember. The cost wasn't apparent that first night, just exhaustion and pain. It wasn't until the second night, when you patrolled again and fought again, that you noticed the small gaps in your memory. A childhood friend's name, the title of a favorite book, small things, easy to dismiss. By the end of the first week, larger pieces were missing. Your father's profession, the name of the village you grew up in, details of your own past, dissolving like salt in water. By the end of the first month, you started the journal. You realized what was happening, understood that the shadows were taking payment for their service. You decided to write everything down, to preserve what you could before it vanished completely. 7 years later, you're still writing, still recording, still trying to hold on to some thread of identity, even as the shadows consume everything you were. The sun touches the horizon now, and you feel it begin. The change is both familiar and strange, something you experience every night but can never quite get used to. Your reflection in the window glass starts to transform. The shadows in the room respond to your presence, deepening, reaching toward you like they recognize a kindred spirit. Your eyes are the first to change. The color drains from them, replaced by complete darkness. Not black like a dark brown eye might be, but true black, lightless, depthless, like looking into a void. When you blink, the darkness doesn't change. You've looked into mirrors enough times to know how unsettling it is. No wonder the townspeople fear you. Your skin pales slightly, taking on a grayish cast that makes you look ill, or perhaps dead. Your hands become colder, cold enough that you've seen frost form when you touch things on winter nights. The shadows themselves begin to cling to you. Wisps of darkness that drift from your fingers like smoke, that trail behind you when you move. This is what you become at night. Not quite human anymore. Something else. Something between the living and the shadows themselves. The town needs this creature even if they hate it, even if they fear it, even if they make warding signs when you pass and teach their children that you're the monster in the dark. Let them think that. It keeps them inside after dark. It keeps them safe. You pull on your dark cloak, the one that helps you blend with the shadows, even when you're not actively using your power. It's made of heavy wool, dyed black with something that makes it seem to absorb light rather than reflect it. The fabric is worn now, frayed at the edges, patched in several places where pale hunters' claws have torn through. You've been meaning to replace it, but you can never quite find the time or the energy. And besides, this cloak has kept you alive for 7 years. There's comfort in its familiarity. Around your waist, you buckle a belt that holds a few essential tools. A knife with a dark blade, useful for cutting through rope or fabric when you're rescuing someone from a precarious situation. A length of thin, strong cord that you've used for everything from climbing to emergency bandages. a small pouch containing chalk for marking buildings during your patrols, letting you know which areas you've already checked. You descend the tower spiral stairs, your footsteps silent despite the stone. Stealth comes naturally now. You're not sure if that's from 7 years of practice or if you're just becoming more shadow-like, your physical presence diminishing as your shadow nature grows. Either way, you move through the tower like a ghost, barely disturbing the air. The door at the base of your tower is heavy oak, reinforced with iron bands. You installed better locks last year after some drunk townspeople decided to try breaking in, convinced you were keeping dark artifacts or stolen goods inside. They didn't get far, but it reminded you that the door needed to be secure during the day when you're helpless. You open it carefully, listening for any sounds outside. The street is quiet. Most people have already retreated to their homes, the smart ones anyway. The streets of Millhaven are emptying as you emerge into the twilight. The curfew is strict and the townsfolk have learned to obey it. No one outside after full dark. It's for their own protection, though many of them think it's your tyranny, your way of controlling them through fear. Let them think that. It keeps them alive. You see old Marcus pulling his shop shutters closed. He's a cobbler, been in Millhaven his whole life. 70 years old, bent with age but still sharp-eyed. He glances your way and quickly looks away, hurrying inside his shop. You hear the bolt slide home, the sound loud in the quiet street. Marcus was one of the first to see you in action. Second week of your vigil, a pale hunter got closer to town than usual, drawn by a lantern someone left burning in a window. You intercepted it right outside Marcus's shop. He watched from his window as you fought, saw the shadows you commanded, saw the creature you were protecting him from. Next day, he closed his shop and went to the town council, demanding they do something about the shadow demon. The council tried, sent guards to arrest you. You avoided them easily, shadow walking away whenever they got close. After a week of this, they gave up, and the pale hunters kept coming and you kept stopping them, and eventually the town accepted that you were a fixture they couldn't remove. Marcus still fears you, still makes warding signs, but he's alive. His grandchildren are alive. That's what matters. The baker's daughter runs past, late returning home from her work. She's maybe 16, with flour still dusting her apron. She sees you and freezes like a deer spotting a wolf. Her eyes go wide, her breath catches. For a moment, you think she might scream, but then she remembers herself, remembers the lessons she's been taught. She lowers her gaze respectfully, mumbles, "Guardian," and hurries past, giving you the widest possible berth. She disappears into the bakery, and you hear the door bar drop into place immediately. Guardian. Some of the townspeople call you that. Not a term of respect, more like a title you forced upon yourself. The Nightbound Guardian, the Shadow Keeper, the Dark Watcher. Different names for the same thing. The creature that haunts their streets after sunset. A mother appears at a window on the second floor of a house, her young son beside her. The boy points at you, saying something you can't hear. The mother's face goes pale, and she yanks the curtains closed, pulling her son away from the window. You hear her voice, muffled but urgent, probably telling the child never to look at you, never to acknowledge you, never to go near the shadow creature. Good. Fear keeps them inside. Inside is safe. You make your way to the eastern edge of town. where the Wraithwood begins. This is your usual starting point, the area most vulnerable to pale hunter incursions. The forest is old, truly ancient, and it has a presence that you can feel even from here. The trees are massive, their trunks thick as houses, their branches reaching toward the sky like grasping hands. In daylight, it's merely unsettling. At night, it's where nightmares are born. The Wraithwood has a reputation that predates your arrival. Hunters avoid it. Loggers won't work its edges. Children are warned never to enter it under any circumstances. Local legends speak of people who wandered in and never returned, of strange lights seen between the trees, of sounds that don't belong to any natural creature. The legends are all true. The pale hunters come from somewhere deep in that forest, from some dark place where normal rules don't apply. You've never ventured far into the Wraithwood yourself. You don't need to. Your job is to stop the pale hunters at the town's edge, to prevent them from ever reaching the streets and homes. What they do in the depths of the forest is irrelevant as long as they stay there. You settle into your watching position on a rooftop overlooking the forest edge. It's the roof of a warehouse, flat and sturdy, with good sight lines in all directions. You've spent hundreds of nights on this roof. There's a spot where you always stand, and if you look closely, you can see the slight indentation your boots have worn into the wooden surface. From here, you can see the entire eastern quarter, the last few houses before the forest begins, the narrow street that runs parallel to the tree line, the fields beyond, where farmers grow their crops during the day and abandon completely at night. And of course, the forest itself, a wall of darkness that seems to pulse with malevolent intent. The shadows gather around you like a cloak, responding to your presence. They recognize you now. 7 years of constant use has created a bond between you and the darkness. The shadows know you, and you know them. It's not a comfortable relationship, more like a predator and prey that have learned to coexist because they need each other. You reach out with your awareness, extending your senses into the darkness. This is one of your primary abilities, shadow sense, the capacity to feel disturbances in the darkness around you. It's how you know when the pale hunters are coming before they reach the town, how you can detect movement in the forest when normal eyes would see nothing. The sensation is difficult to describe. It's not quite like seeing or hearing, more like feeling ripples in water, except the water is darkness itself. When something moves through shadow, it creates disturbances that you can sense. The bigger the disturbance, the closer the threat. Tonight, the shadows whisper of movement in the forest. 3 distinct presences moving with that characteristic wrongness that marks the pale hunters. Their movement doesn't disturb the shadows the way normal creatures do. Instead, they seem to absorb shadow as they move, creating voids in the darkness that your sense can detect like missing teeth. They're heading toward town, drawn by the light and warmth and life that human settlement represents. Pale hunters are attracted to these things the way moths are attracted to flames. They don't seem to need to feed exactly. You've never seen them eat, but they're drawn to living humans with undeniable intent, and what they do to their victims is worse than simple death. You've seen the aftermath. Once, early in your vigil, before you understood how important it was to stop every single pale hunter. One got past you, made it into town, into a house on the southern edge. By the time you found it, The family inside was already dead. But they weren't just dead. They were drained. Not of blood, but of something else. Life essence, warmth, the fundamental spark that makes something alive rather than simply existing. Their bodies were intact but frozen, covered in frost. Their faces locked in expressions of absolute terror. They looked like ice sculptures of people, perfect in every detail except completely, utterly lifeless. You burned that house and couldn't risk whatever transformation the pale hunters might work on their victims. Couldn't risk them rising as something else, something equally terrible. The town thought it was an accident, a lantern knocked over. Better they think that than know the truth. That family's faces still haunt you, or at least they did. You can't quite remember them anymore. The details have faded, taken by the shadows, but the feeling remains, the guilt, the determination that it will never happen again. You wait, patient, conserving your strength. The shadows want to be used. They pull at you, eager, hungry, for the connection that allows them to manifest in the physical world. But you've learned discipline over the years. Use them too freely, and the cost becomes unbearable. Use them only when necessary, only when there's no other choice. The first pale hunter emerges from the tree line, its tall form seeming to materialize from the darkness between trees. Even after 7 years, even after seeing them hundreds of times, the sight of them sends a chill through you. They're wrong in ways that go beyond simple ugliness or strangeness. They violate some fundamental rule about how living things should look and move. They stand perhaps 8 feet tall when fully upright, though they often hunch slightly, making them seem smaller until they reach for something and their true height becomes apparent. Their bodies are impossibly thin, like someone stretched a normal human frame to twice its height without adding any mass. You can see the shapes of bones under their pale skin, can see the way their joints bend at angles that shouldn't be possible. Their arms are the most disturbing feature, far too long, reaching past their knees, ending in hands with fingers like spider legs. 6 fingers on each hand, each finger as long as your forearm, each tipped with a nail that's more like a claw. When they reach for something, those fingers spread wide, creating a cage of bone and flesh that nothing can escape from. Their faces are the worst part, almost human, but not quite. Like a mask that doesn't fit properly. The proportions are wrong. Eyes too large, taking up too much of the face, completely black like yours, but somehow emptier. Nose too small, just 2 slits in the pale flesh. Mouth too wide, filled with teeth that are all the same size and shape, like someone carved them from white stone. They don't have expressions. Their faces are fixed, unchanging, locked in a look of empty hunger that never varies. You've seen them in combat, seen them injured, seen them driven back. The face never changes, no pain, no fear, no emotion at all. Just that empty, patient hunger. 2 more pale hunters emerge behind the first, moving in perfect synchronization. They don't communicate, at least not in any way you can detect. No sounds, no gestures, but they coordinate their movements with eerie precision, like they're all controlled by the same mind. 3 tonight. A normal night then. You've faced as many as 12 at once, during the winter months when they're most active. You've learned their patterns over the years. They're more aggressive in winter, more numerous, more willing to take risks. In summer, they're cautious, sending only small groups to test the town's defenses. The pale hunters move toward town. silent and purposeful. Their feet don't make sounds when they touch the ground. No footsteps, no rustling of grass, nothing. They glide forward like ghosts, like shadows given form. Which is ironic, considering you're the one everyone calls the shadow creature. They're heading for the Henderson house, the one with light still burning in an upstairs window. You know that house well. Edmund Henderson, his wife Sarah, their 3 children. The oldest, Thomas, likes to read late into the night. You shadow walked him home from the library more than once when he stayed too late, lost in his books. The pale hunters have detected the light, the warmth, the presence of life. They're drawn to it like compass needles to north. In another minute, they'll reach the house. They'll find a way in. Windows, doors, chimneys. It doesn't matter. They can slip through gaps that seem too small, can climb walls like insects. Once inside, the Henderson family will die, unless you stop them. You move before they get close, shadow walking from your rooftop to the street below. This is one of your primary abilities, the power to step from one shadow to another in an instant, regardless of the distance between them. It's not teleportation, exactly. More like the shadows are all connected, and you can navigate that connection, emerging wherever darkness exists. The cost is immediate and painful. You feel something tear inside your mind, some memory ripped away to fuel the shadow walk. What was it? A face? A place? You're not sure. It's already gone, leaving just a vague sense of loss. You land in the street between the pale hunters and the Henderson house. Your arrival is silent, shadows dispersing around you like water. The pale hunters stop, their attention fixing on you immediately. They recognize you. Of course they do. You fought them hundreds of times. You're the obstacle that stands between them and their prey every single night. Not tonight, you say quietly. Your voice sounds strange even to your own ears, layered with shadow resonance. The words echo slightly as if spoken in a vast empty space rather than an open street. Not ever. The first pale hunter moves toward you, its long arms reaching. There's no hesitation, no consideration. It simply acts, trying to remove the obstacle. You respond by pulling the shadows around you into a tangible form, creating a barrier of solid darkness between you and it. Shadow manipulation is your core ability, the foundation everything else is built on. You can shape shadows, give them form and substance, make them solid enough to block attacks or strike enemies. The shadows become extensions of your will, responding to your intent. The creature's fingers scrape against the shadow wall you've created, and you feel the impact in your chest like a physical blow. This is the reality of your power. The shadows aren't separate from you. They're part of you, or you're part of them. The distinction gets blurrier every night. When something strikes your shadow constructs, you feel it. Not as sharply as if you were struck directly, but enough to hurt, enough to drain you. The pale hunter pulls back, reassessing. The other two are already moving to flank you, trying to get around your barrier. They're not intelligent in the way humans are, but they have a predatory cunning. They understand obstacles, understand tactics at some basic level. You shape the shadows into tendrils and send them whipping toward the pale hunters, driving them back. The tendrils are like extensions of your arms, except you can create dozens of them, can control them all simultaneously. They lash out with enough force to knock a grown man off his feet, strike with the weight of solid metal despite being made of nothing but darkness. The pale hunters retreat a few steps, regrouping. One tries to circle around, heading for an alley that would take it toward the town center and away from your position. You shadow walk to intercept, appearing in its path before it can take 3 steps. The creature recoils from your sudden presence, and you press the advantage, creating a wave of shadow that drives it back toward its companions. The battle continues for perhaps 20 minutes. It's more of a dance than a fight. You drive them back. They try new approaches. You intercept. They attempt to split up. You herd them together. They try to rush you all at once. You create barriers they can't cross. It's exhausting work, requiring constant concentration, constant use of your powers. You can feel the cost accumulating with each passing minute. Your head begins to throb, a dull ache behind your eyes that will grow worse before the night is over. Your nose starts to bleed, a thin trickle of warmth running down to your lip. You taste copper. Eventually, they retreat. It's not defeat, exactly. More like a decision that the effort isn't worth the potential reward. The pale hunters turn as one and glide back toward the tree line, melting into the darkness between the trees. They'll try again tomorrow night, or the next, or the next. They're patient. They have all the time in the world. You don't. You lean against the wall, breathing heavily. The headache is worse now, pulsing in rhythm with your heartbeat. You touch your nose and your fingers come away wet with blood. More blood than usual. That's concerning. The costs are getting steeper. Along with the headache comes that familiar fog, the sense that something has slipped away from your memory. You try to grab onto it, to identify what you've lost, but it's like trying to hold smoke. What was it this time? A childhood memory, someone's name, a skill you once had. You'll never know. It's already gone, fed to the shadows as payment for using their power. You pull out your journal from inside your cloak and add a brief entry right there in the street, using a piece of charcoal you keep for this purpose. The words are shaky, barely legible, but you get them down. Night 2559. 3 pale hunters, eastern edge, drove them back. Henderson House protected, lost something, not sure what. The fog is thicker tonight, nose bleeding more than usual, cost increasing. You tuck the journal away and continue your patrol. The night is only beginning. There will be more pale hunters before dawn. There always are. You move through the eastern quarter methodically, checking each street, each alley, each gap between buildings where something might hide. This is the routine you've developed over 7 years, a pattern worn so deep into your behavior that you could probably do it blind. East to west, north to south, covering every vulnerable point in a specific order that ensures maximum coverage with minimum wasted movement. The town is quiet now. Behind closed doors and shuttered windows, families sit by their hearths, trying to pretend everything is normal, trying to ignore the fact that a creature of shadow patrols their streets, that monsters lurk in the nearby forest, that their safety depends on something they fear almost as much as the threat itself. You pass the bakery and smell fresh bread, even through the closed door. The baker works through the night, preparing for the morning rush. You've never spoken to him, but you know his routine. Know that he rises at 2 in the morning, lights his ovens by 3, has the first loaves ready by dawn. You know this because you've watched his windows on countless patrols, ensuring no pale hunters are drawn by the warmth and light of his ovens. At the blacksmith's forge, the fire has been banked for the night, but still glows faintly behind the heavy shutters. The smith is a large man named Gareth, with arms like tree trunks and a voice that carries across half the town. He hates you more than most, calls you a demon every chance he gets. But his daughter is alive because you shadow walked her out of a collapsed building last spring, and he can't quite reconcile that with his hatred. You continue north, checking the residential quarter. This is where most of the town's families live, in rows of neat houses with small gardens. During the day, children play in these streets, their laughter echoing off the walls. At night, the streets are silent as a grave, every door barred, every window shuttered. You pause at the Miller house. Daniel Miller, his wife Anne, their baby daughter who was born just 3 months ago. You were patrolling nearby when Anne went into labor, heard her cries of pain through the window. You stood guard outside their house that entire night, ensuring nothing disturbed them during that vulnerable time. In the morning, you heard the baby's first cry and felt something you couldn't quite name. Pride, hope, relief, whatever it was. The shadows took it from you within days, but you remember the event, if not the emotion attached to it. You moved to the Western Quarter, where the wealthier merchants live. Larger houses, better maintained, with iron fences and proper gardens. These people have the resources to hire guards, to install better locks, to protect themselves. But guards and locks mean nothing to pale hunters. Only you stand between them and death, though most would never admit it. You check the perimeter of Merchant Lord Ashford's estate. He's one of the few townspeople who's never made a warding sign at you, never called you demon or monster. Not because he's grateful for your protection, but because he simply doesn't acknowledge your existence at all. To him, you're beneath notice, a problem that exists below his station. You find that almost more insulting than the outright hatred, but at least his household obeys curfew without complaint. Your shadow sense picks up movement at the southern edge, not pale hunters this time, but human movement. Someone's broken curfew. You shadow walk to the location, paying the cost with another fragment of memory, and find 2 figures sneaking through an alley. Young people, by the look of them, dressed too well to be locals. Travelers, maybe, or merchants' children visiting from another town. They carry a lantern, which is foolish beyond measure. Light draws pale hunters like blood draws sharks. You step out of the shadows in front of them, and both gasp in surprise. The young man puts himself in front of the young woman, trying to protect her. Brave, but futile against what you are. Curfew, you say flatly. Your voice startles them further, that shadow-layered quality making it sound inhuman. Return to your lodgings, now. We're just taking a walk, the young woman says, trying to sound defiant but her voice shaking. We're guests of Merchant Lord Ashford. We have every right to... You have the right to die, you interrupt. That's what you're choosing. The curfew exists for a reason. Break it again, and I won't intervene to save you. That's a lie. You'll always intervene. You can't help it. But they don't need to know that. The young man's eyes narrow. You're the shadow tyrant everyone whispers about, the one who keeps this town living in fear. Yes, you say simply, and I'm the reason everyone in this town is still alive. Now go inside before something worse than me finds you. As if summoned by your words, your shadow sense screams a warning. Pale hunters, multiple signatures coming from the southern forest edge, fast. The lantern light drew them just as you feared. Run, You command, "Now, that way. Don't stop until you reach Ashford's estate." They must hear something in your voice, some urgency that cuts through their pride and fear. They run. You turn toward the approaching threat, already pulling shadows around you, preparing for combat. 4 pale hunters emerge from the darkness, moving faster than usual. They definitely detected the lantern light, the movement, the presence of prey. They're hunting now, not just patrolling. That makes them more dangerous. You create a wall of shadow between them and the fleeing young people, buying time. The pale hunters hit your barrier with force that sends pain lancing through your chest. You hold it, gritting your teeth, feeling something warm running from your nose, more blood. One of the pale hunters tries to go around. You shadow walk to intercept, appearing in his path. It reaches for you with those impossible fingers, and you barely dodge. Its touch is cold enough to burn, and even glancing contact sends frost spreading across your cloak. You shape shadows into constructs, creating wolf-like forms that leap at the pale hunters. The constructs aren't real animals, just shadows, shaped to look like them, but they're solid enough to fight. They crash into the pale hunters, teeth and claws made of darkness tearing at pale flesh. But you're stretched thin, maintaining multiple constructs while also defending yourself. The cost is mounting rapidly. Your vision begins to blur. Your head pounds like someone's driving nails through your skull. Blood pours freely from your nose now, soaking your collar. And the memories are burning away faster than ever. You feel them going, one after another. A teacher's name, your first home, the taste of your mother's cooking, a friend's laughter, all consumed by the shadows, all used as fuel to keep these constructs manifested, to keep fighting, to keep the pale hunters away from those foolish young people who broke curfew. You don't know how long the battle lasts. Time becomes elastic, stretching and compressing, but eventually the pale hunters retreat. They've expended too much effort for too little reward. They meld back into the southern forest, leaving you swaying on your feet, barely conscious. You collapse against a wall, sliding down to sit on the cobblestones. Your hands are shaking. Your vision is fragmenting, pieces of your sight going dark. You can't remember where you are for a moment. Millhaven, Eastern Quarter, no, Southern Quarter. You're on patrol. You're protecting the town. But why? There was a reason. Something important. Someone important. The memory's gone, taken by the shadows. You force yourself to your feet. The night is only half over. There will be more encounters before dawn. There always are. You stumble forward, beginning your patrol pattern again, your body moving on autopilot, even as your mind struggles to understand why you're doing this. The journal. You need to write in the journal. That's important. You pull it out, stare at the pages. They're filled with your handwriting, but you can't quite remember writing most of it. You add a new entry, the words barely coherent. Night, 2000. Something. Southern Edge. 4. Drove back. Saved 2 idiots with lantern. Heavy cost. Can't remember. Can't remember why this matters. Journal says it matters. Trust journal. You continue your patrol, moving through empty streets, checking shadows, watching for threats. The routine sustains you when conscious thought becomes too difficult. Your body knows what to do even when your mind is foggy. At the northern edge, you encounter 2 more pale hunters. You drive them back with shadow barriers and tendrils, paying the cost with more fragments of yourself. At the western edge, 3 more. At the eastern edge again, one solitary scout. By the time dawn begins to lighten the eastern sky, you've faced 11 pale hunters total. You've used your powers dozens of times. The cost is catastrophic. You barely make it back to your tower, stumbling through the streets as the sun rises. The shadows release you as daylight takes hold, and you become merely human again. Weak, exhausted, bleeding, barely able to stand, you collapse at your desk, grab your journal, force your hand to move. Day 2560, 11 total. Heavy night, heavy cost, lost so much. Can't remember mother's name, can't remember own childhood, can't remember why I started this. Journal says failed village once, won't fail again. That's enough, has to be enough. You don't make it to bed. You collapse at the desk, unconscious before your head hits the wood. Behind you, maps of patrol routes and danger zones cover the walls. Your previous journal volumes sit on their shelf. And outside, Millhaven wakes to another safe morning, never knowing how close they came to death in the night, never knowing what it cost to keep them safe. You wake in the late afternoon to the sound of commotion in the town below. This is unusual. Voices, many of them, and the clatter of horses and armor. Millhaven doesn't get much traffic beyond the occasional merchant caravan, and merchants don't wear armor. You drag yourself to the window, your body protesting every movement. Last night's battle left you drained in ways that go beyond physical tiredness. Your head still aches, a constant throb behind your eyes. Your nose is crusted with dried blood. Your hands shake when you try to grip the windowsill. Looking down at the town square, you see them immediately. 5 figures in traveling clothes and armor, their equipment marking them as professional warriors, heroes, adventurers. Whatever you want to call them, they're here. And that means someone in Millhaven sent for help. Someone decided the Nightbound Guardian was a bigger threat than the Pale Hunters. You watch as they address the crowd that's gathered around them. The leader appears to be a tall woman in plate armor that gleams even in the overcast afternoon light. A paladin, probably, given the holy symbol hanging from her neck. Beside her stands a massive man with a greatsword strapped to his back, the blade easily as tall as you are. A robed figure that must be a mage, staff in hand, power radiating from them even at this distance. An archer with a longbow and a quiver full of arrows, and a younger person in leather armor, probably a scout or rogue. A professional adventuring party, experienced, dangerous. You can't hear their words from your tower, but you can see the crowd's reaction. Relief washes over faces. People actually smile for the first time in years. They're looking at these heroes like salvation has arrived, like their long nightmare is finally ending. They think these heroes will kill you and free them from your tyranny. Your hands clench on the windowsill. These heroes have no idea what they're walking into. They don't know about the Pale Hunters, don't understand why the curfew exists, don't comprehend that you're the only thing standing between this town and death. They see a villain who controls shadows and enforces an iron rule over frightened townspeople. They see darkness and fear and oppression. They see a monster that needs to be slain. They're not wrong about what you are, but they're wrong about why. You need to warn them, need to explain, but you already know how that conversation will go. Heroes see the world in simple terms: light and darkness, good and evil. Your darkness, you enforce fear. Therefore, you're evil. The equation is simple, elegant, wrong, but simple. Still, you have to try. As the sun sets and you feel your power returning, you make a decision. You'll approach them tonight, calmly, peacefully. You'll explain about the Pale Hunters, show them your journal, make them understand. Maybe, if you're lucky, they'll listen. It's a fragile hope, but it's all you have. Night falls completely, and you begin your transformation. Eyes darkening to void black, skin paling, shadows gathering around you like old friends. You pull on your cloak and descend from the tower, but instead of heading to your usual patrol route, you move toward the town center where the heroes have set up camp. You find them in the square, sitting around a small fire they've built. Illegal during curfew hours, but they clearly don't care about your rules. As you approach, the scout sees you first. She stands quickly, hand moving to a dagger at her belt. "Contact," she says quietly, and the others rise immediately, forming a defensive position. You stop several paces away, keeping your hands visible and empty. "I need to talk to you," you say. Your shadow-layered voice makes it sound more ominous than you intend. "You don't understand what you're—" An arrow whistles past your head, close enough that you feel the wind of its passage. The archer has already knocked another, this one aimed directly at your chest. "Shadow creature," the paladin says, her voice hard with righteous conviction. "You've terrorized this town for too long. In the name of the light, we've come to end your reign." "I'm not terrorizing anyone." You try to explain. "I'm protecting them. There are creatures in the forest, the Pale Hunters. They come every night. I'm the only thing stopping them from—" "Lies," the mage interrupts. "We've researched shadow magic. We know what you are, a creature of darkness that feeds on fear. You've enslaved this town, made them afraid to leave their homes. That ends tonight." The great sword wielder steps forward, his massive blade gleaming with enchantments. "Surrender or die, your choice, demon." They're not going to listen. You can see it in their eyes, hear it in their voices. They've already decided what you are. Nothing you say will change their minds. "Please," you say, and you hate how desperate you sound. "Just wait until full dark. Watch the forest edges. You'll see the Pale Hunters. You'll understand." "We'll see nothing but your summoned creatures," the paladin says. "More lies to justify your existence. We know your type. We fought shadow casters before. You're all the same." Your shadow sense screams a warning. Pale Hunters approaching from the eastern edge. 3 of them, drawn by the firelight and noise. They'll be here in minutes. "They're coming," you say urgently. "Right now, from the east, 3 of them. If you won't believe me, at least come with me. See for yourselves." The heroes exchange glances. The paladin nods to the scout. "Go, check the eastern edge. If this is a trap, signal us." The scout disappears into the darkness, moving with practiced stealth. You want to tell them she's in danger, that Pale Hunters can sense human presence, that sending her alone is suicide. But they won't listen. You turn toward the eastern edge, preparing to intercept the Pale Hunters before they reach the scout. The heroes follow, weapons ready, clearly expecting a trap. You reach the edge just as the scout does. She's crouched behind a barrel watching the forest. And then the Pale Hunters emerge, 3 tall figures gliding out of the darkness between trees. The scout gasps, stumbling backward. What are those?" "Pale Hunters," you say. "What I've been fighting every night for 7 years." The creatures spot the scout and change direction, moving toward her with terrible purpose. You shadow walk between them and her, creating a barrier just as the other heroes arrive. For a moment, everyone freezes. The heroes see the pale hunters clearly now, see the wrongness of them, the inhuman proportions, the empty hunger in their faces, see that you're standing between the creatures and the scout protecting her. The paladin's expression shifts from certainty to confusion. What are? One of the pale hunters lunges forward, its long arms reaching over your shadow barrier toward the scout. You reinforce the barrier, feeling the impact like a punch to the gut. The creature's claws scrape against solid darkness, unable to pass. Help me drive them back, you shout to the heroes. They're drawn by warmth and fear. The fire attracted them. We need to... The mage reacts first, sending a bolt of fire streaking toward the nearest pale hunter. It strikes dead center, burning into pale flesh. The creature stumbles but doesn't fall. The greatsword wielder charges forward, his blade sweeping toward another pale hunter. The enchanted steel cuts deep, black ichor spraying from the wound. The creature makes no sound, just reaches for him with those impossible fingers. Defensive formation, the paladin commands, falling into leader mode instantly. The heroes form up, working together with the precision of long practice. And you, despite everything, despite being their enemy moments ago, fight alongside them. The battle against the three pale hunters is brutal but brief. With the heroes fighting alongside you, the creatures are overwhelmed. You create shadow barriers and tendrils to control their movement while the heroes strike with blessed steel and magic. Within 10 minutes, all three pale hunters are down, their bodies dissolving into pale ash that the wind carries away. You collapse against a wall, exhausted from the expenditure of power. The heroes gather around you, weapons lowered but not sheathed, wary, confused, trying to reconcile what they just experienced with what they thought they knew. The paladin approaches first. She's breathing hard, a scratch on her cheek from where a pale hunter got too close. What were those things? She asks. Pale hunters, you say again, your voice rough. They come from the Wraithwood, every night, dozens of them. I've been driving them back for 7 years. You pull out your journal, hold it up with shaking hands. It's all in here, every night. 2,560 encounters, every time I've saved this town from things they never see. The paladin takes the journal carefully, begins flipping through pages. Her expression changes as she reads, hardening into something that might be respect or might be pity. You're not the villain, she says slowly. We were wrong. I'm exactly what you thought, you correct her. I'm a creature of shadow and darkness. I've killed before and I'll kill again, but I use that darkness to protect. That's the only difference. The mage steps forward, his power sight active, examining you with senses beyond normal vision. The shadow corruption is severe, he says quietly. You're more shadow than human now. How long before there's nothing left of you? Does it matter, you ask? As long as I can still fight, as long as I can still protect them, it doesn't matter. The heroes spend the rest of that night patrolling with you. You showed them your routes, your danger zones, the places where pale hunters most commonly emerge. 2 more encounters happen before dawn. Both times, they fight alongside you, learning your tactics, understanding your purpose. By the time the sun rises, they're exhausted and shaken. The paladin approaches you as you prepare to return to your tower. We came here to kill a villain, she says. Instead, we found a guardian sacrificing everything to protect people who hate them. I owe you an apology. Keep your apology, you say flatly. I don't need it. I need you to leave. Go back to whoever sent you and tell them the situation is handled. This is my burden. It has to be me. Why? The scout asks. She's young, maybe 18, and she's been crying. The reality of the pale hunters shook her badly. Why does it have to be you? You consider telling her about the village you failed, about the guilt that drives you, but you can't remember the details anymore. So you just say, because someone has to stand watch, and I can pay the cost longer than anyone else. You turn and walk toward your tower, leaving the heroes standing in the dawn light. Behind you, you hear them talking in low voices, debating, discussing, but you're too tired to care. You have to sleep. Tonight, there will be more pale hunters. There always are. The heroes don't leave. Despite your insistence, despite your clear dismissal, they remain in Millhaven. They've taken rooms at the inn, and they patrol with you each night, learning the patterns of the pale hunters, helping where they can. You should appreciate the help. It makes the work easier, allows you to conserve strength, reduces the cost you pay each night. But instead, you find their presence unsettling. You've been alone for so long that having companions feels wrong, like wearing clothes that don't quite fit. The paladin's name is Sarah. Over the course of a week, she tells you this and other details. The greatsword wielder is Khan, quiet and methodical. The mage is Lyria, brilliant but arrogant. The archer is Thomas, steady and reliable. The scout is Ren, young and still learning but brave. You try not to learn their names, try to keep them at a distance. You know you'll forget eventually. The shadows will take these memories like they've taken everything else. Better not to form connections that will only dissolve into fog. But Sarah is persistent. She talks to you during patrols, asks questions about your life before, about the journal, about how the shadow magic works. You answer curtly at first, then more fully as the nights pass. It's been so long since anyone treated you like a person rather than a monster. You're dying, she says one night, blunt and direct. The shadow corruption is killing you slowly. How long do you have? You consider lying, then decide there's no point. I don't know. Months, maybe less. The cost increases every night. Eventually, there won't be enough of me left to sustain life. Then we need to find another way, Sarah insists. There must be some method of protecting the town that doesn't require you to sacrifice yourself. If there is, I haven't found it, you say. The pale hunters come from somewhere deep in the Wraithwood. As long as that source exists, they'll keep coming, and only shadow magic seems to work against them effectively. Blessed weapons help, but they're not enough on their own. Then we find the source, Khan rumbles. He rarely speaks, but when he does, people listen. We go into the forest. We end this at its origin. No one who goes deep into the Wraithwood comes back, you say. The forest itself is hostile. You'd be dead within hours. We're heroes, Thomas says with a slight smile. Being dead within hours is basically our job description. Despite yourself, despite all your efforts to remain distant, you feel something. A warmth in your chest that might be hope or might be friendship. It's been so long since you felt anything positive that you can barely identify it. The shadows notice. That night, when you use your power, the cost is steeper than usual. The shadows are jealous, you realize. They don't want you forming connections. They want you isolated, alone, dependent only on them. You pay the price and keep your distance from the heroes after that. But Sarah notices the change and calls you on it. "You're pulling away," she says. "Why?" "Because I'll forget you," you say simply. "The shadows take memories as payment. I'll forget your names, your faces, that we ever spoke. Better not to get attached to something I'll lose." Sarah is quiet for a long moment. Then she does something unexpected. She hugs you, just walks up and wraps her arms around you, holding tight despite your shadows, despite your cold, despite everything you are. "Then I'll remember for both of us," she says, "and I'll remind you every night if I have to." You stand frozen, unable to remember the last time someone touched you voluntarily, unable to remember what human warmth feels like. The sensation is overwhelming, and you find yourself shaking, unable to process the kindness. When she releases you, you turn away quickly, unwilling to let her see what might be tears on your face. If you can still cry, you're not sure anymore. That night, you fight with a renewed determination, not just because it's your duty, but because someone sees you as more than a monster. Someone believes you're worth remembering. The cost is catastrophic. The shadows punish you for that moment of connection, taking memories in great chunks. You lose your entire childhood in one night. Gone, burned away, the price of allowing yourself to feel human, even briefly. But when you write in your journal the next morning, you include a new line. "Sarah hugged me. I don't know why this matters, but it does. Remember that it mattered." 3 weeks after the hero's arrival, something changes. Your shadow sense picks up movement in the Wraithwood unlike anything you've experienced before. Not just pale hunters, but something else. Something massive. Something that radiates power and malevolence in equal measure. You're on the eastern edge when you feel it, her presence approaching through the forest with terrible purpose. The trees themselves seem to wither as it passes, their leaves blackening and falling. You signal to Sarah, who's been patrolling with you. She sees your expression and immediately goes on alert. What is it? You can't find words. Your shadow sense is screaming warnings. This thing, whatever it is, makes the pale hunters seem like insects in comparison. It's ancient, powerful, angry. "Get the others," you manage. "All of them, and wake the town. Get everyone into the central square, as far from the forest edges as possible." Sarah doesn't question, just runs to alert the others. You stand at the forest edge, watching, waiting, as the presence draws closer. The pale hunters emerge first, not 3 or 4, but dozens of them. They pour out of the Wraithwood like a tide, more than you've ever seen at once. 30, 40, 50 of them, filling the space between the trees and the town, and behind them comes their master. It steps out of the forest, and reality seems to bend around it. 12 feet tall, humanoid in basic shape but wrong in every detail. Its body is made of the same pale substance as the pale hunters, but denser, more solid, more real. Its face is a nightmare of stretched human features. Too many eyes, too many teeth, expressions that shift and flow like water. It wears tattered robes that might once have been fine clothing, now stained with substances you don't want to identify, and it radiates cold, actual, physical cold that makes frost spread across the ground with each step it takes. This is what commands the pale hunters. This is their source, their master, their origin point, the pallid king. You name it in your mind, because it seems to rule over them like a monarch. The creature sees you and stops at the forest edge. When it speaks, its voice is like wind through a graveyard, hollow and ancient and filled with malice. "Shadow thief," it says, "you have been stealing my hunters, driving them from their rightful prey. This ends tonight." You don't respond, can't respond. You just pull the shadows around you, preparing for what you know is coming. You're going to die tonight. You can feel it. But maybe, if you're lucky, you can buy enough time for the heroes to evacuate the town. The heroes arrive, taking up positions around you. Sarah steps forward, her sword gleaming with holy light. "We won't let you take this town," she declares. "Leave now, or face justice." The pallid king laughs, a sound like bones scraping against stone. "Justice, from servants of light, you understand nothing. I am ancient beyond your comprehension. I was feeding on human fear before your kingdoms existed. You cannot stop me." It steps forward, crossing from the forest into the town's boundary. Where its feet touch the ground, the earth turns grey and lifeless. Plants wither, even the stones seem to lose their color. The pale hunters surge forward behind their master, a wave of death-given form. There are too many, far too many, even with the heroes fighting alongside you, even with everything you have. This is too much, but you have to try. You launch the first attack, sending shadow tendrils whipping toward the pallid king. They strike its body and recoil as if hitting solid stone. Your shadows can't hurt it. This thing is beyond your power. The heroes attack from multiple angles. Sarah's blessed blade cuts into the creature's arm. Khan's great sword cleaves through its leg. Lyria's fire spells explode against its chest. Tomas's arrows sink into its torso. None of it matters. The wounds close as quickly as they're made, pale flesh knitting together with unnatural speed. The pallid king reaches out with one massive hand and swats Khan aside like an insect. The warrior crashes into a building wall with bone-breaking force. "Khan!" Sarah screams, but she can't reach him. The pale hunters have swarmed the heroes, overwhelming them with sheer numbers. You're fighting on multiple fronts now, creating barriers to protect the heroes, shadow walking to intercept pale hunters trying to reach the town center, maintaining constructs to slow the endless tide. The cost is mounting faster than ever. Your nose is hemorrhaging, blood pouring down your face. Your vision is fragmenting. Memories are burning away in great swaths, entire years of your life consumed in minutes. Ren goes down next, a pale hunter's touch freezing her shoulder. She cries out in pain and collapses. Tomas drags her to cover while maintaining, suppressing fire with his bow. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. You're losing. The heroes are being overwhelmed. The pallid king is advancing toward the town center, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Unless there's one option you've been holding in reserve. One last technique you discovered years ago but never used because you knew it would be fatal. You can dissolve yourself completely into shadow, become pure darkness for a brief time, wielding power beyond anything you've managed before. But doing so will burn away everything that remains of you. Every memory, every fragment of identity, everything you are will be consumed. You'll become shadow permanently, with no way back to human form. You'll cease to exist as a person, but you might, just might, be able to defeat the pallid king before you fade completely. You look at Sarah, fighting desperately against 3 pale hunters, at young Ren, frozen and wounded, at the town behind them, full of families who hate you but don't deserve to die. You've already made your choice. You made it 7 years ago when you decided to protect Millhaven. Everything since then has just been delaying the inevitable. You dive deeper into the shadows than you ever have before, calling on power you've kept locked away because you knew using it would be the end. The shadows respond with terrible eagerness. Your form dissolves entirely, becoming pure shadow. In this state, you're no longer bound by physical limitations. You can be everywhere at once, can strike from any angle, can manipulate darkness itself as an extension of your will. You become a storm of shadow, crashing through the pale hunter's ranks. Where you strike, they fall, unable to withstand the concentrated darkness. You drive them back, step by step, forcing them toward the forest. The Pallid King turns its attention to you. Recognizing the threat, it raises both hands, and pale light pours from them, trying to burn away your shadow form. But you're too diffuse, too spread out. The light passes through you harmlessly. You reform in front of the Pallid King, gathering all your remaining strength into one point. You create a spear of solidified shadow, sharper than any blade, denser than any metal, and you drive it through the creature's chest, aiming for where its heart should be. The spear punches through pale flesh and strikes something vital, not a physical organ but something conceptual, the source of its power, the core of its existence. The Pallid King screams, a sound that shatters windows and makes everyone clutch their ears in pain. It staggers backward, the spear of shadow still embedded in his chest. You pour everything you have left into that strike, all your remaining strength, all your accumulated shadow power, all the pieces of yourself you've been hoarding. You channel it through the spear, through the wound, directly into the creature's core. The Pallid King's body begins to crack, darkness spreading through it like veins of black lightning. It tries to pull the spear out, but you won't let it. You hold it there, even as your shadow form begins to dissolve, even as you feel yourself fading. Impossible, the Pallid King gasps. You are nothing, a half-dead shadow wielder. You cannot. Its words cut off as the cracks reach its head. The creature's body crumbles, dissolving into pale ash that the wind carries away. With its death, you feel a change ripple through the forest. The pale hunters, all of them, are fading. Without their master to sustain them, they're returning to whatever darkness spawned them. The threat is over. After 7 years, it's finally over. But so are you. You try to reform your body, but you can't. You've gone too far, used too much. Your shadow now nothing but shadow, and you're dissolving, fading, becoming nothing. You collapse to the ground, your form barely holding together. The heroes surround you, Sarah falling to her knees beside your fading shape. No, she says, her hands glowing with healing light. No, you're not dying, not after everything. Stay with us. But healing light can't help you. You're not injured. You're just used up, spent. There's nothing left of you to heal. Lyria joins her, adding her magic to Sarah's efforts. The corruption is too deep. They've given everything. I don't know if we can. You reach up with a hand that's more shadow than flesh. Touch Sarah's arm gently. She understands what you're trying to say. Your journal, she says, tears streaming down her face. Let me get your journal. You wanted everything recorded. Ren, still half frozen but mobile, runs to get the journal from your tower. She returns quickly, pressing it into your fading hands. You can barely hold the pen, can barely see the page, but you force yourself to write one final entry. The words are shaky, barely legible, but they're there. Night 2577. Pallid King destroyed. Pale Hunters gone. Millhaven safe. Forever safe. I remember now. I remember why. Failed a village once. Swore never again. Kept that promise. Worth it. Every memory lost, every piece burned away. Worth it. The shadows are leaving. I'm leaving. That's okay. Someone remember for me. Someone write the ending. I can't. The pen falls from your fingers. You look up at the heroes gathered around you, at the townspeople who have started to emerge from their homes, at the town you've protected for 7 years, at the cost of everything you were. Sarah leans close. "What's your name?" she asks desperately. "Please, let us know your name so we can remember you properly." You search for it, one last time. Dig through the fog and emptiness where your memories used to be. And there, at the very bottom, buried under 7 years of sacrifice, you find it. One last fragment miraculously preserved. "Morgan," you whisper, the word barely audible. Sarah nods, her face wet with tears. "Thank you, Morgan. Rest, now. You've earned it." You feel yourself letting go, drifting away. The darkness closes in, but this time it's not the shadows. It's just the natural end of things. You've kept your promise. You didn't fail this time. Millhaven is safe. That's enough. Your form dissolves completely, shadows dispersing on the wind. Morgan, the Nightbound Guardian, is gone. But the night remains safe. 3 days after Morgan's death, the town of Millhaven holds a memorial service. It's the largest gathering the town has ever seen. Every citizen is present, along with the heroes and travelers from neighboring settlements who heard the story. Sarah stands before the crowd, Morgan's journal in her hands. She spent the last 3 days reading it cover to cover, piecing together the story of the 7-year vigil. "I came to Millhaven to kill a villain," she begins, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. "I thought I was here to save this town from a tyrant who ruled through fear and darkness. I was wrong." She opens the journal, showing the densely written pages. This is the record of 2,577 nights, 7 years of entries. Every night, Morgan patrolled your streets, drove back creatures you never saw, paid costs you never knew. They did this while you feared them, while you hated them, while you made signs against them in the streets. Murmurs run through the crowd. Shame, guilt, realization. Morgan chose to forget everything, Sarah continues. Forgot their childhood, their family, their friends, forgot their own name, forgot everything that made them human. They chose this knowing the cost because they had failed to protect another town once and refused to fail again. She closes the journal carefully. We owe Morgan everything. Our lives, our homes, our children's futures. And we repaid them with fear and suspicion. We can't change that now, but we can remember. We can make sure their sacrifice means something. The town agrees. Over the following weeks, they erect a memorial at the spot where Morgan fell. A statue carved from dark stone, depicting a cloaked figure with shadows swirling around them. The inscription reads, "Morgan, the Nightbound Guardian. For 7 years, they stood between darkness and light. They gave everything so we could have something never forgotten." The tower becomes a shrine. People leave flowers, candles, small offerings. Parents bring their children and tell them the story of the shadow wielder who saved them all. Sarah establishes a foundation in Morgan's name, the Guardians Fund, dedicated to supporting those who take on protective roles that society won't acknowledge or reward. It helps them maintain their equipment, provide safe places to rest, and most importantly, ensures their stories are recorded and remembered. Morgan died alone and afraid, forgetting everything they once were. Sierra tells the Fund's first board meeting, no one else should have to end that way. We can't prevent the sacrifice, but we can ensure they're not forgotten in the process. Years pass, decades, centuries. Millhaven grows into a great city, prosperous and safe. The memorial remains well maintained and frequently visited. Morgan's story spreads throughout the kingdom, inspiring others who stand watch in dark places. And on certain nights, when shadows grow long and darkness deepens, some people swear they see a figure standing at the forest edge, not threatening, not dangerous, just watching, guarding. Perhaps it's imagination, perhaps it's just a play of light and shadow, or perhaps some part of Morgan truly does remain, woven into the darkness of the place they protected. The Nightbound Guardian is gone, has been gone for centuries, but the protection remains, and the memory endures. And there, dear dark hearts, our story finds its rest. Morgan, the Nightbound Guardian, gave everything to protect a town that feared them. They fought for 7 years, losing themselves piece by piece until nothing remained but purpose and shadow. And they faced heroes who came to kill them, and in the final battle, some of those heroes fell. But in the end, Morgan's sacrifice saved everyone. Remember, sometimes the ones called villains are just misunderstood protectors standing in the darkness, so others can sleep safely in the light. Sometimes the cost of doing what's right is everything you are, and sometimes that's a price worth paying. You're safe here in the shadows with me, Dark Hearts. You're understood, and tomorrow there will be more stories waiting for us in the darkness. If you enjoyed Morgan's story, give this video a like, subscribe to join our community of Dark Hearts and the Misunderstood, and leave a comment telling me what kind of villain, anti-hero, or morally grey character you'd like to explore next. Perhaps a cursed king, a fallen knight, or a witch protecting forbidden knowledge. Until we meet again in the shadows, rest well, knowing that somewhere, guardians